In this video, I've created for you an extremely comprehensive step-by-step problem-solving tutorial I've ever seen, and we're going to use emotional intelligence, motivation, confidence, and this is going to be for software engineering, business, life, because all of your career, no matter what you do every day, you are problem solving if you're trying to do a good job. So with that, let's get started. Well, first is, of course, let's use our common sense. This is before we even start on anything. Does the problem need to be solved? Can you work around the problem? Of course, the analogy is, let's say you're facing a big mountain. You know, you can walk around that mountain. You don't have to build a tunnel. You don't have to climb over the mountain. Not every problem can be solved or needs to be solved. In addition, maybe somebody else has solved that problem. With that same mountain analogy, maybe there's another highway where there is a tunnel. Maybe there is another way. Maybe there's a helicopter. I don't know. But generally, if problems exist, they didn't just appear. And many people have tried to solve them and have solved them very likely. And because they've solved them, there in every industry exists something called patterns. In engineering, if you're studying engineering, you would come across patterns very quickly, no matter whether you're doing software engineering or you're making chairs. Well, there are patterns for doing these things, so you don't start from scratch and you don't reinvent the wheel. So you basically just look at how do people usually do this. Look at the manuals, look at, again, the patterns. They're called patterns because they are common patterns. You can call them blueprints, but essentially you don't need to do any problem solving. You have to just follow instructions. Now, of course, you also need a certain kind of a mindset for when you start planning. Many people feel like it's daunting to problem solve because that in itself can sound a little bit like challenging, but all you have to do, I've found, is that instead of saying to yourself, I have to solve this math problem. Oh no, I have to solve this problem at work, or this is so hard. You don't have to, you get to. This is a sign of a certain quality of life, that you get to go to school, that you get to have a certain job, that you get to work on certain interesting problems as opposed to working on no interesting problems. You get to do this and you get to train your brain. This is amazing for you. Okay, you don't have to, you get to. That's lucky for you. And of course, it's a fun challenge after that. You can relax, and you know what you can look forward to? You can look forward to pleasantly surprising yourself with the quality of your solution. Believe in yourself, believe in the creativity of your mind. Don't just stifle it by having this negative self-talk right from the beginning. And you want to start thinking about, well, what's the best approach for solving this? Is it going to be on my own? Is it going to be with a team, with a single brainstorming partner, with a coach? This is all the things you do before you start working on the problem. The longer and the better you plan, the fewer problems you will encounter during the execution. The planning is directly correlated to how fast and how well you will perform the job. Of course, you don't want to plan, never start. That's just procrastination. And as long as you balance it, certainly make sure you plan and don't plow into the work. Now, once you have your mindset right and you're planning, the next is to continue to do high-level thinking. Very importantly, do you understand the problem? And I might think, okay, that's a silly point to make, but then I will think back to when I was in school and how many test questions there were that I got wrong because I went so fast through reading the question because I was trying to save time because of the test, that I didn't completely understand the question. And so even though I knew the solution, I knew how to do the problem. I just didn't read the problem carefully enough. And of course, you can, even in a real world scenario, the important thing is to not just understand the problem, but is it rational? We often give ourselves extra work, extra challenges. Does the problem need reconsideration? Because you don't have to solve every problem. In fact, the fewer problems you solve in your life, in your work, the better, because that means you've taken out the less important ones. This is prioritization. And you've put all your effort into the few very important ones. And when you put all your energy to solving the few very important ones, you get focus. Focus is key to better work. So taking things out, FOMO, you don't want to have fear of missing out because, somebody else is working on something interesting. You got to do your own thing. So is it rational for you to do it? And then, of course, once it's rational, you have to know that, especially in the real world, once you get out of extremely simple problems, there are just about always multiple ways to solve a single problem. There's brute force solutions, there's finesse solutions, there are creative solutions, there are solutions that involve a combination, like that same mountain, climbing a mountain or going over a mountain. Well, what if you climb a mountain? That would be brute force, but of course you don't want to be brute force. But what if you walk around it, which also has its own problems, but find a spot where it's small, and so then the brute force solution is easy. So that's a combination of like a little bit of brute force, but also a little bit of finesse and creativity, trial and error. All those things can lead to unique solutions. And so your job will be, before you start working on a solution, think of multiple potential solutions, and then you would start looking at, well, which one will be better. So now you're still planning and picking which are better. When you do that, what you want to do is write, in software engineering they call it pseudocode, where you don't write software engineering code, it's not in a programming language, but you write the steps, almost like an algorithm. Like if you start a business, the first step is create business, let's say, for example. I wouldn't have this as my first steps, but many people do. Beginners, they do like create business cards, get a domain name. That's their first, second step. Those are easy, right? And then they don't realize that the fifth step is like do the marketing, and maybe they got themselves into like an ultra competitive business idea, which happens to first time entrepreneurs. But if they don't do that step by step by step, they don't see that big pitfall waiting for them, and they just start doing step one, step two. So you want to break the big problem into tiny little problems, and then go over the little problems, break those into pieces until every little piece is broken down, not to a granular, minute level, because that would be insane, but rational level, so that you can foresee which are going to be the pitfalls. And then out of the pitfalls, you pick, okay, this solution has the fewer pitfalls, this solution has pitfalls that are solvable, this solution is going to have a pitfall that is not solvable, I'm going to avoid that. And then, of course, you match the solution path you pick, the single solution, to what's best for you, for your goals. Do you need a universal solution, like any mountain must be climbed from 1 foot mountain hill to the Mount Everest, right? That's impossible almost, because it would require different solutions. Or do you need a certain solution like scalable, so that a lot of people can pass through? That would be building a tunnel perhaps through the mountain. But you have to know your goals. Why are you solving the problems? That's part of understanding the problems. And then once you understand the problem well, you'll be able to match one of your potential solutions to what's going to most ideally be practical, while at the same time solving it in the way you need it to be solved, because you have certain requirements in the real world. Now, once you start getting going, there's a catch-22 that just about everybody experiences. When you are starting out, you have a confidence problem. You don't know how to do it, perhaps. Let's say it's a math problem. Just about everybody hates those. Just about everybody, well, many people really feel low confidence. Why? They just don't practice it enough, right? As soon as you see a math problem, you want to avoid it. But confidence is built in many ways, but one of the main ways is by practicing and getting better. Sure, you can do positive self-talk, and I recommend that. Positive kind of visualizing yourself solving the problems. I recommend that. But also there's the actual doing, finding tiny problems, fixing, solving those, getting better, getting more experience, and with more experience you get more confidence. So it's a catch-22. You see, little successes gives you confidence, and practice gives you experience, and that experience gives you success. And once you have success, it's a cycle, right? The success gives you confidence, and you get more practice, you feel more comfortable doing it, and you do it more and more. And so you get that positive snowball effect versus the negative snowball effect. And what's on the other side of that? Of course, the problem is failure destroys confidence. So if you are stuck, if you're by yourself and you're failing, that math problem, it's like, in the back of the book, they give you the answer so you can verify if you get it right, and you seem to never get it right, and you have no one to ask, and you're just stuck. That builds low confidence, and you start thinking the negative self-reinforcing self-talk, like, I'm so bad at this. Oh my God, I'm just not good at math. Something's not right with my brain. I'm the worst person in the class. Whatever it is, it's not accurate. You just got yourself stuck in this self-reinforcing negative cycle where, with practice, with experience, with giving yourself, a little bit of a break sometimes, you can build that positive self-reinforcing cycle. So sometimes you just need to also take a step back, let your mind relax, because your mind, when it's relaxed, when you're passionate about certain problems, it will think in the background, and the mind does work on difficult problems that you are really interested in solving when you're relaxed. You're walking down the street, you're taking a shower, you wake up from a nap, and some solution hits you. We've all had that because our minds keep working on the problem when we are relaxed. So actually balancing work and relaxation, not entire relaxation, not like totally leaving it and going on vacation, but just taking a step back can actually still be a part of working. And of course, there are things like emotional intelligence, where you want to understand yourself. And of course, emotional intelligence is a very broad field. In this case, we're going to want to look at your own understanding of yourself, so that you would use mindfulness and understand what motivates you. Because often we don't want to do the math problems or solve some things because we're just not into it, right? If you don't have the motivation, like I remember in computer science, when I took classes, when I was studying computer science in university, when I took classes that I knew I wasn't going to use at work or ever, like some outdated concepts in computer science or just things that just weren't going to be my field, I was like, you couldn't get me to try to solve those problems. I just wasn't into it. But when I was taking classes on subjects that I knew I was going to use and that were going to be very important for me, I was really into it, to the point that I didn't realize how much into it I was until people were telling me, hey, you are super extra into this thing. I'm motivated by seeing how motivated you are. And I'm like, really? I actually just didn't realize. I'm taking the thing that I wanted to take, and now I'm interested, and now I'm taking notes, and I'm sitting the first in class, I'm sitting in the front of the class, I'm asking questions, and people were like literally commenting without me even asking about it, right? People just coming up to me and they're like, wow, you are really into this. And I was like, I guess, yes, it was just so natural. It didn't hit me back then. But finding projects to work on that actually motivate you, and that actually obviously comes from knowing yourself, not being told, hey, go have this job because you have to have this job or because it's good for you, but because you really want to. That will keep you engaged in a passionate manner, because otherwise your mind will wander. Like my mind wandered when I took those classes that I knew I didn't need. I was like, why am I here? Leave me alone. I didn't want it. And so you don't have to be the smartest person in terms of like pure IQ or brain function, but you have to be able to stay with the problem the longest while staying passionate with the problem the longest, because as you're passionately engaged, creativity will be high. When you study creativity, what you see is it's a chart like this. People in the beginning, when they don't know a lot about a problem or a solution, they try many things. They're very creative. And once they work on something for a while, their quality of work still goes up. But it's because they are relying on patterns and things and their experience. But because of their experience, they no longer experiment that much. And so the creativity maybe goes up a little bit, but not that much. So the rate of creativity slows usually. Sometimes because they have experience to fall back on, but often, and this is a real life situation, when you work on something for a while, like let's say you're a teacher, the first few years you're just there teaching your heart out to every class, and then you see you have some experiences that are deflating. Maybe there's too much management, too much like, you have to fill out paperwork, things you didn't want to do, things, if teaching makes you passionate, but you have to fill out paperwork half of your time, or, deal with management and all these things you didn't want to, it eats away at your heart, at your passion, and then you're not that passionate, and then then you're just going through the motion. But if you can maintain a high level of passion, like literally work on, be mindful of keeping your passion alive for a long time, then what you bring is high level of expertise over a long time, constantly problem solving. How do I do this better? How do I make that better? Coming up with new solutions, engaging with your work, and from your work that spurns new motivation. That is the recipe for long-term, highest quality problem solving. That is way outside the box thinking that your colleagues wouldn't do because their passion has gone down and they haven't done it for a long time. Maybe they kind of, are working in the same problem, in the same field for a while, but they're not solving problems actively, or they're not as passionate about it. Your level of quality will shoot through the roof and surpass them. So keeping passion alive will keep your creativity at its highest over a longest period of time, and that's when you solve problems best. Now, okay, this is all the things that are high level. What about when you're starting to actually solve the problem and do the actual work? Well, all the productivity tactics come into play. For example, the reason that actually we looked at so many high level perspectives was that we want to take our amygdala, that part of the brain that deals with stress, the fight or flight quick response, we want to take it out of the equation. Because what we want is, we don't want to have tunnel vision. We don't want to jump in and just do one thing. We want to have a broad scope of solutions. We want to think well and be creative. Use the parts of the brain that make us human, that make us use reason and logic and long-term thinking and be creative. These are the parts of the brain that, they're the more evolved parts of the brain. And from your brainstem, the amygdala is one of the first parts of the brain. And so just in terms of your brain neurons firing, the amygdala is actually, it takes a tiny less bit of time for that to fire. And so the first impulse is always like the more stressed out one, the more short-term thinking one, to just remove the problem, remove the stress, or remove the source of the stress. But what we want to do, and what we've been working towards, is actually bypassing the amygdala by giving us more time and being in a relaxed state, so that we can be more reasonable, more logical, more creative. So planning a little longer, being more relaxed, being more confident actually does that for us on autopilot. We don't even have to think about it. But as you work, you want to make sure that you are in a relaxed state, in a rested state. Of course, if you didn't sleep, your work is just going to be worse. So all the things you have to do to yourself to take care of yourself: sleep, eat well, exercise. Exercise is largely for mental health, not just physical health. All those things, you got to make sure you do that. Of course, when you get stuck, take breaks so that you don't burn yourself out. And what you want to do, especially in like computer science or engineering, there's this test-driven development where you early on create tests. And then as you create your software, you would literally check, and does it pass this test? Does it pass that test? And the more interesting tests you make, the more you know, oh, I'm on the right track because it's passing all the tests. And when I make a new feature and when I make a change, it's still not failing all those other tests, even though it added more features and more functionality. So sometimes if you're in an engineering kind of a field, then test-driven development can also be really helpful to catch problems as you go. And let's just continue with a few more points I want to make about as you work. Of course, just like it's important to have focus, it's important to find a quiet place to work with not a lot of people talking. You know how today it's very popular to find these community working spaces because it's obviously cheaper for your employer to pay rent for that, co-working spaces. But they're horrible for Focus. It's noisy all the time. People are walking all the time. People are talking about their day all the time. Even people who are not in your company, people in other companies who you can't control, they walk by you, they're in the next door. It's actually counterproductive, I would say, because what you want is pay a little more for quiet space so that you can focus. And you want to focus also in a non-distracted environment over a longer period of time. Give yourself blocks of time, 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Of course, you want to take breaks in between that. You can't maintain a crazy amount of focus for that long. There's the Pomodoro principle, which is 25 minutes on, 5 minutes break, 25 minutes on, 5 minutes break, or roughly that, depending on what's comfortable for you. And hopefully you can fit a few of your Pomodoro chunks into that 1 or 2 or 3 hours of working so that you get a lot of work done, and then you're focusing on the right solution, doing the right kind of work, and essentially you'll be getting closer to solving the problem. Now, when you're solving the problem, let's talk about solution quality, because that's obviously important, because all the work is for the solution, right? Well, first, some people would say, like in engineering, I faced this a lot, where I was like, does my code look good? And people are like, well, if it works, it works. And that was the most ridiculous answer. That it's a common answer in engineering, in software engineering. Like, you will hear this a lot, and I heard this a lot from experience. I thought it was the worst, most ridiculous answer, because yes, it works in my little programming environment, but does it scale? Does it work for many people? Does it work on high traffic systems? Most importantly, does it fulfill your goals? Because your goals may never be to have a high traffic system. Sometimes it's not your goal to have a high level of throughput. Sometimes you just know your maximum and you just need to get that, and you're fine. So the solution has to match your goals, which were a part of understanding the problem early on. That has to be a tight-knit marriage. And of course, after that, does it work well? Are people happy with it? Are there improvements that can be made? Of course, there are always improvements that can be made. Nothing is final, or just about most things are never final. Things can always be improved over time. You want to continue to make adjustments, because when you're problem solving, we can kind of categorize that this is some sort of a technology you're working on, or some kind of a system, and systems are never done. The first version is horrible, the next versions are better. Same with everything. So you want to continuously improve what you did, make sure it's repeatable. Other people can repeat the system too, and then your solution will become a pattern for other people to follow. Of course, your pattern will be named after you, as many patterns are named after people who discovered them, and then you'll be, of course, famous. So it's not only a great solution, but the key to fame. That's just a joke, but this is the A to Z of problem solving, starting with planning, to mindset, to emotional intelligence, to creativity. That's for life, right? Because it's rare that you're just solving a little tiny problem. What you need is a system that will be really powerful. And it's really powerful when you engage all those elements of life to really create an optimal solution. So that's my super comprehensive A to Z approach to problem solving for you.